Uh, okay. The first 4 Dhyana Slokams Patham. We said why Dhyana Shloka is important. Yeah, because the ideation, whenever you do any particular worshipping, whether you do it as a prayer or you do it as a gratitude or you do it as you're wanting to understand a little more of that tattvam, that principle, whatever you do, the ideation is important. Yeah, the right ideation. So Dhyana Shlokam, in a lot of these shlokas, provide you a very clear ideation, the kind of form and the kind of the gunas that you want to think about this particular entity that you are trying to associate with. Yeah. So Dakshinamurti Dhyanam, the first 4 shlokas we saw. The 5th one is Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaika Murtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. So in the end of the Om, this, if you see the rest of the shlokas didn't start with the Om. This is the only shloka that starts with Om, because Om is represented as the Pranava. Pranava is the symbol, or rather Om is the symbol for Pranava. Pranava is the primordial you could say it's the primordial sound, or the primordial life force. Prana, from the word prana comes pranava, right? So it's the primordial life force that is represented by the symbol of Om. So Om Namah Pranavarthaya. So this Dakshinamurti, or whatever this entity that we are seeing as Dakshinamurti or the Guru or as Adi Guru, that is represented by Om. So the Om, if you want to expand and understand what Om means, Pranava Artha is this Dakshinamurti. The Artha of the Pranava, the meaning of Omkara is Dakshinamurti. That is one way of looking at this. And what is this? The knowledge that you get when you try to understand the Pranava. Pranava Artha is Shuddha Jnanam. Shuddha Jnanam. Ashuddha Jnanam. Then the question is there something called as Ashuddha Jnanam? Right? So what it means by Shuddha Jnanam is, we've spoken earlier. Any Vidya, there are 2 kinds of Vidya. Learning, there are 2 kinds. One is Paravidya, the other is Aparavidya. Shariya? Paravidya, Aparavidya is all the understanding, the knowledge that you have of the material world for transactional, for survival purposes, knowledge that you gain. Even the highest PhD kuda pannona namba. Even if you do research and a doctorate on nuclear physics, that is still Aparavidya. That is still the understanding of the sciences of the material world. Paravidya is Shuddha Jnanam. It is the only Vidya which is the knowledge of the self. It's the knowledge of the object, not knowledge of the subject, not of the object. Every other knowledge is the knowledge of the object. That is I and that object. But Paravidya is the knowledge of the subject, which is me, I, myself. So that is Shuddha Jnanam. In fact, even in Lalita Sahasranamla, Shuddha Vidyankurakara Dvijapankti Dvayojvala. When her teeth, the rows of her 2 rows of her teeth are described, they're described as referencing to Shuddha Jnanam. Of course, Andaratala, the context is of Shodashi and all that. But then wherever Shuddha Jnanam is mentioned, it is the Jnanam that is of the self, of the subject. So here, when you are expanding the Pranava, when the Pranava is expanded, the Artha of Omkara, it gives you Shuddha Jnanam. And Dakshinamurti is the form of Shuddha Jnanam. Shuddha Jnanaika Murtaye. Oh Dakshinamurti. Wait a second, there's a little work happening. Sorry. Work okay. So when you expand and try to understand what Om as a symbol references to, you can explain it in many different ways. Om. But in this context, the Artha is pointed as Om is the symbol of that ultimate knowledge, which is also represented as Dakshinamurti, the form of Dakshinamurti. And how is this form? Nirmalaya Prashantaya. Nirmalaya. There is no mala. There is no impurity. Nirmalaya. And Prashantaya. So there is this difference between Shantaya and Prashantaya. What is the difference? Shantam can usually be indicated as a peace that is, or we conduct World Peace Day. We try to strive for peace in a certain way, right? When you're striving for peace, what you're doing is you're trying to go away from the noise and you want to go for peace. I'm wanting peace. There's too much of noise. There's too much of tension, too much of stress. I want to be in a peaceful place. So when you're trying to look for peace like that, that is a peace that is opposed to sound. But that peace is still in the duality, because that peace after a little while can give you boredom. It can very quickly give you boredom, because you have run away from something seeking peace elsewhere, and that peace is again after a certain point in time, it's inactivity. That kind of peace is that pure veru shantam is inactivity, which will lead you to boredom very soon, which means you will now start to look at what next. Right? So that is the kind of peace that we would refer to as Shantam. But Prashantam is the peace that underlies noise and silence. This peace underlies, the Prashantam exists when there is sound and when there is no sound, when there is activity, when there is no activity, when there is engagement, or when there is transaction, when there is complete cessation of transaction. In both these cases, there is an underlying peace. That peace is Prashantam. Right? In Vedanta, what they talk about the self or the subject is not something that is found only when you're silent. It is ever existing. The self that you are is ever existing, whether you're amidst in a discotheque, amidst loud noise dancing, or you're in a silent meditation hall. That self that you are is always there. It is not bound or restricted by any of the external conditioning. The external conditioning does not define that particular self that you are. Right? So there is no conditioning on the self. The self is always existing. The point is, where do we pay attention to? Where is our attention? Is our attention while we are at the discotheque? If our attention is on the external activity and the engagement is outside, that is where our attention is. In the silence of a meditation hall, if your attention is into that silence, then so when you bring your attention to that silence within you, in whatever external condition, then what you experience is Prashanta. So the Prashanta is that experience that you gain or that you recognize under whatever external circumstances. So this is a good test. Like my guru says, in general Western countries, when you go into the road traffic is very regulated, right? And there are lanes, very clear lanes, you don't cut lanes without the indicator and all that. So he says, if you want to really learn proper driving, and if you want to observe how your mind works, you should drive in the traffic of India, Chennai, Bombay. So he'll say you should drive in such traffic. Only then you will know how you are really. If you're driving your vehicle on a very clear road, on a highway, when there is no disturbance, and when you're driving your vehicle, there's no way of knowing how good your driving is. Right? So similarly, for you to know if you are experiencing that peace while in the midst of activity. If you're able to touch that peace in the midst of activity, then you've got the sense of what it is. Otherwise, if you're running for peace outside, if you're running away from noise and trying to look for peace, it will be a perennial. You will never find it outside, right? Eventually, you will go to a place, you'll be there for a while, and then you will find that it will cause you unrest and disturbance in that place, and you look for another place. So you will keep looking for peace in the external environment. Of course, the external environment has a role to play in your ability to pay attention to the inside, but the important thing to notice is that the attention should be turned inwards. That is important, right? Only then prashantaya dawns upon us. So Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaika Murtiye. So when you want to understand the meaning of pranava, Dakshinamurti is the meaning of that pranava. He is the Paravidya. He is the ultimate knowledge of what? Of myself, of who I am. See, we've spoken about this. We've looked at the Dakshinamurti image and we've understood the various parts, right? The very important thing we have to constantly tell ourselves is this image is me. It is about me. It is about me. It's about me. It's not about some individual sitting out there. I am not going to someone to favor me, give me favor, make my life better. No, I am trying to absorb that entity within me and understand it as my own self. Because this principle, this entity is there existing within me. I just have to activate it. All of these are methods of activating that. Okay. So Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaika Murtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. So this Dakshinamurti is without impurities, nirmala, without any. So this impurities and these impurities are in the mind. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. We talk about the Shad Ripus, right? The six the ripus or the six disturbances that we carry within us. Those are called as mala, impurities. So nirmala is what happens is when you find that space for that peace, that prashanta, or that you try to understand, focus on what the pranava is, the essential primordial sound Om. If you're able to, this shloka actually also indicates that you can meditate upon Dakshinamurti as Om. Just the sound of Om, Akara, Ukara, Makara, when you're chanting Om, visualize Dakshinamurti, the form of Dakshinamurti, because the whole essence of Dakshinamurti is through silence. He is teaching you Brahma Jnanam, Shuddha Jnanam, completely through silence. There is absolutely no words used. And Omkara is the first, or it's said it's the primordial sound, because that is the sound that first came out when creation began. And Omkara, the Akara, Ukara, Makara, is the only sound that you can make with your mouth without the tongue being used. Without the usage of the tongue, that's the only sound you can make. A, U, And said whenever the tongue comes into play, then it disrupts, it creates, it creates all the various languages and the various, the good and the bad that comes out is when the tongue starts interfering. When the tongue is not used, all you have is this pure sound, which is A, U, Ma. So this Omkara is the, if you want to say, it's the Bija Akshara of Dakshinamurti in a way, right? So you can think of that form. Okay. So that way, this is a beautiful shloka. The last Dhyana Slokam is Ishvaro Guru Atmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. This is also a very beautiful shloka where it talks about three essential things: Ishvaraha, Guruhu, and Atma. These three, it says, Murti Bheda Vibhagine. These three are differentiated only by form. The difference there is only by form. In essence, there is no difference between the three. See, when a disciple, when a devotee, he goes to the guru introduces the Ishvara. So at that time, the understanding of what the Ishvara is learned from the guru. And you see Ishvara in Murti, which means the guru first introduces or initiates you into a Murti. He gives you a form in the Krishna Pa, in the Lakshmi Pa, in the Devi Pa, in the Vichikonchole. He asks you to do worshipping of all that, the form, Murti. And then what happens? The same guru will introduce, so first you do the Saguna Upasana of the Ishvara. Then the same guru introduces you to Nirguna Upasana of the Murti. Nirguna Upasana of the, not the Murti, of Ishvara, of that primordial entity. He teaches you to do Nirguna Upasana, which means you start thinking of this form, or rather this entity, as Nirguna, Nirmala. All of those, in many shlokas you'll have the attributes defined as Nirmala, Nishkriya, Nirupa, Nishpapa, Nishkarma. So the Ni is added to indicate that it's not. So it doesn't carry the form or attribute. So it's attributeless, formless. Nirguna. So he teaches Guru teaches Nirguna Upasana of the same Ishvara. So that's the next level. Then the third level, when we start understanding the Nirguna aspect of the Ishvara, then you understand that Guru is a certain aspect of that Ishvara himself. The Guru is an aspect of the Ishvara. And then from that stage, so now your Guru and Ishvara have become one. And then later, the same Guru then takes you into the next level, where he takes you into, you are the same as the Guru and the Ishvara. So Atma, Guru and Ishvara are one and the same. And the only difference is in form alone. Ishvaro Guru Atma iti Murti Bheda Vibhagine. Only difference is the division is in form, not in its essence. Right? And how is this? So whatever these three together, what is the nature of that? It is Vyomavat. Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya. Vyomavat means as though, like space. Vyoma means space. Vyomavat means as though, like space. Vyapta, which means it is pervading, it is all omnipresent. Vyapta Dehaya, the body of whom is like this, as though like space, he is all pervading. To that Dakshinamurti I prostrate. So the same Dakshinamurti is the Guru. He is the Atma. We said how he is the Atma, the way Ramana Maharshi had explained. Dakshina Amurti. He is the formless that exists within you on the right side of your body. The heart that you think, the Hridaya is not the heart. The heart is on the left side. But Hridaya is on the right side, which is the formless. Dakshina is right. Amurti is formless. So that essence which is within us, the conscious entity within us, which is what I am, that Dakshinamurti is within me as Atma. It is my Guru, the Guru who is manifest outside, but he is the same as the Ishvara that I am trying to attain. So the Ishvara, when I try to attain, when the Ishvara that you try to attain, that we're trying to seek, we're trying to understand, the whole cycle comes to an end with that. The whole circle makes a loop. when you try to recognize that Ishvara through the Guru's grace, it's like an instant short circuiting. It's like it goes like this. You start understanding through the Guru's grace, you go all the way and you try to understand what Ishvara is through form and then through formless. And when we truly understand what Ishvara is, there is an immediate short circuiting to recognize that Ishvara is in me and that Ishvara is me. So that instantaneous recognition is the essence of the shloka. So Ishvara Guruhu Atma iti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurti Namaha. Okay, so that is a Dhyana Slokam. So what we'll do today with that Dhyana Slokam is done. Today we'll just chant the first shloka, running out of time, and then we will we'll see the meaning of the shloka next week. Okay. Okay. Yeah. One of you can follow, whoever. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Irkya? Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari
Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari
Tulyam nijantargatam
Tulyam nijantargatam
Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari
Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari
Tulyam nijantargatam
Tulyam nijantargatam
Pashyannatmani mayaya bahirivod
Pashyannatmani mayaya bahirivo
Bhutam yatha nidraya
Bhutam yatha nityaya
Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari
Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari
Tulyam nijantargatam
Tulyam nijantargatam
Pashyannatmani mayaya bahirivod
Pashyannatmani mayaya bahirivo
Bhutam yatha nidraya
Bhutam yada nidraya
Yas sakshat kurute prabodha samaye
Yat sakshat kurute prabodha samaye
Yas sakshat kurute prabodha samaye
Yat sakshat kurute prabodha samaye
Svatmanameva dvayam
Svatmanamevadvayam
Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam
Tasmai Sri Guru Murtaye Namaidam
Shri Dakshina Murtaye
Shri Dakshina Murtaye
Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam
Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam
Pashyannatmani mayaya bahirivod bhutam yatha nidraya
Pashyannatmani mayaya bahirivor bhutam yatha nidraya
Yas sakshat kurute prabodha samaye swatmanameva dvayam
Yat sakshat kurute prabodha samaye svatmanamevadvayam
Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye
Tasmai Sri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Sri Dakshina Murtaye.
Very nice. So we will pause here today.